You are listening to the Space-Tastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Line's third novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Lost on Planet M-142. Trapped on the hostile world of Planet M-142, Commander Jessa Peacock Masters of the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau has spent 3 grueling months undercover, investigating a mysterious cult led by the enigmatic blind prophet, Danielle Jabot. Is Jabot a visionary, a fraud, or something far more dangerous? The deeper Jessa digs, the more tangled the web becomes: secrets, deception, and whispers of an impending assassination. When her husband and fellow operative, Nate Masters, finally joins her, their mission takes a deadly turn. Someone wants Danielle Jabot dead, and the list of suspects is as vast as the stars. As Jessa and Nate race against time, they must navigate a treacherous world of fanatic followers, shadowy enemies, and their own rekindled partnership. With every step closer to the truth, one question looms: is Jabot the target, or the mastermind? This is episode 6, What Year Is It? If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
I replayed the conversation with Dr. Rubin over and over in my head while I sat in the overstuffed chair. I hugged my legs, waiting with bated breath for Nate to wake up. In that time, I mentally ran down all possible outcomes. I glanced at my watch. I had that conversation with Dr. Rubin 5 hours ago. Tears stained my face again. What's with all the tears, I wondered. I never cried this much. It must be the hormones from the pregnancy, I decided. Peek. Why are you crying? I heard a tiny voice ask from underneath the covers. He discarded them, emerging from the blankets. He searched the room with his eyes until he found me. He put his hands behind him and pushed himself up into an upright position. Did my brother do this to you? Did he make you cry? Jag, you are awake. I brushed away my tears, smiling through them. You have been very ill. I rose to my feet and walked around the bed, sitting down next to him. How long have I been asleep? My mouth feels like I swallowed a pillow. He stretched his arms above his head, yawning. About 7 hours. You developed the same red blisters and high fever that put me out for 10 days, I told him, brushing his moist hair out of his eyes. Had he asked if his brother made me cry? Did he think Ben was still alive? How was I going to break it to him that Ben died? Did Ben make you cry? You let me know if he did. I will hurt him. His eyes grew pensive as his features softened. He took my hand in his. When you told me that Ben proposed, I should have told you that I was in love with you. He shot me that charming smile that made me weak in the knees and lightheaded. Forgive me? Just then a chill traveled up my spine and a feeling of déjà vu washed over me. Nate and I had this same conversation many years ago. I remembered it like the back of my hand. I often thought about it over the years, imagining how different my life would have been, and how glad I was that it turned out the way it did. I watched Nate emerge from his Fort Andrews base home that day. The very sight of him made my toes curl and my heart race. I loved him. This man I had worked with day in and day out, ridding space of the bad people, for a year. I loved him. At first, it was an innocent crush, but somewhere along the way, after working so closely with him, that crush had turned into full-blown love. I imagined myself running my fingers through his hair as he told me that he loved me. I could feel his lips press against mine as they had on many occasions when we had to pretend to be a married couple. The way he stole glances at me, the way he stared into my eyes, the way he smiled at me, I felt certain that he felt the same way about me. But I had been dating his brother Ben. Dating him since before I developed a crush on Nate. I loved Ben, but I wasn't in love with him. I was in love with Nate. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my runaway heart, as I entered the passenger seat of his car. Ben asked me to marry him. Just give me one good reason why I shouldn't marry him, I pleaded with Nate, cocking my head to the side. He searched my face for a few seconds. He looked as if he might cry. Then he hardened his features. Welcome to the family, he replied, opening the door to his beat-up Jaguar, climbing behind the steering wheel. We rode in silence to the spaceport, where we caught a landing craft to rendezvous with the Washington. We spoke only when necessary. You imagined his feelings for you, I told myself. I determined not to let it ruin our working relationship. The next day, we acted as if nothing happened. Soon we fell back into our normal routine because it was easier than dealing with the ghost that haunted us. The ghost of what might have been. I married Ben, and my adoration for him turned into affection, and eventually my affection turned into love. We enjoyed our life together, loving each other more than we could have ever imagined. Things turned out for the best, I decided. Reggie was proof of that. My love for Ben had grown every day. I loved him with every fiber of my being, and when I lost him, such an intense hole filled my heart. So intense I considered ending my life. But I wondered from time to time what life would have been like if Nate had returned my feelings. I cringed because that Nate was not the same Nate I loved now. Nate had a reputation as a playboy. A reputation I knew too well. He dated an assembly line of women. The day after each date, he would have me send the girl a bouquet of flowers with a card addressed to the most special woman in the world, so he didn't have to remember her name. The car crash that killed Ben changed all that. Nate found faith during that dark time, and since then, he had become a remarkable husband and father. As a partner, he had always been loyal, protective, and keenly observant. Now those same qualities were shining through in his family life as well. Dr. Rubin said he might experience a memory loss, but to lose 13 years? I took a deep breath. Can you tell me what year it is? When he brought my left hand to his lips to kiss it, his eyes fell upon my engagement ring that contained a large diamond in the middle of two smaller ones. Then he noticed the wedding band on my index finger. He inspected it for a few seconds before glancing up at me. He met my gaze and ventured, "You and Ben got married without telling me? What year is it?" "It's 2138, he said in a matter-of-fact tone, holding up my hand. "How could you both get married without telling me?" He gestured toward the rings. I jerked my hand away from him. "I am married to you." I stood up and turned my back to him, hugging myself. "We're married?" "I don't think so. I'd remember something like that." He let out a chuckle. I didn't find anything humorous in this situation. My husband didn't remember our wedding, our marriage, our family, and nevertheless, the baby kicking furiously within my womb. I turned my head to peer at him. "Believe it or not, in 2151, which is the year we are in, you and I are married. We got married earlier this year. 2151, that would mean I have a 13-year gap in my memory." He cast me a bewildered look. "How is that possible?" I swung around, sitting back down on the bed. "We have been on a mission on this planet," I elaborated, motioning outside. "There was a bombing, and you developed red blisters and a high fever. You are on antibiotics, but one of the drug's side effects is memory loss." I reached over to the nightstand and picked up my Quan pad. I handed it to Nate. "Read me the date." He seized the Quan pad, scanning it. May 10th, 2151. He stared at it for a few moments before meeting my gaze. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. "You and I are married?" I tapped the Quan pad. "Search for the 2151 Master Strasser wedding." After a few seconds, I noted his eyes reading from left to right, left to right. He seemed engrossed in whatever he had found. "Our wedding was held at the White House Rose Garden." "How did that happen?" he asked, glancing up at me. "When Madeline Ashton, my mother's best friend since kindergarten, took office as president, my mother left the IIB to become the head of the Secret Service." Nate nodded and returned to the article. "Your father stopped the wedding, and you confronted him? It says here you told him he was only a sperm donor." He looked up again, grinning. "Peak, I'm proud of you." He read further before his face darkened and became contorted. He was arrested for masterminding the plot to kill Benjamin Masters. Federal agent Benjamin Masters died in a car crash in 2150 when a car, that of one Luke Hayden, collided with Masters' vehicle head-on. The crash killed him and his unborn son, Joshua Masters, and left Jessica Strasser, Benjamin Masters' wife, temporarily paralyzed. He lifted his chin and stared at me as if begging for an explanation. Jag, I'm sorry. It sounds like it is your father who should be sorry. He killed Ben and his own grandson. Nate's voice cracked as he spoke. Tears in his throat. He bit his lip. I loved Ben so much. I know that he was the younger brother, but I always admired the way he had his life together, how he knew what he wanted and went after it. That was mostly a facade. Ben liked to be the person that everyone loved, the most popular person. It drove me nuts. He followed all the rules to the T. I reached under my shirt and fingered my locket that Ben left me. You know me, I tend to break more rules than I keep. Didn't you and I get married a little too soon after Ben died? You helped me learn to walk again. We fell in love. We tried to fight our feelings for months, but when we returned to the Liberty, it became increasingly difficult. I leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. I will always love Ben, and our marriage was wonderful, but we lived two separate lives. We only saw each other every so often. You, me, and the kids, we are a real family. Kids. How can we have kids if we only got married earlier this year? He gave me a sidelong glance. Ben and I had a daughter, Regina. She's 8. You adopted her when we married. Then a few months ago, I explained, scrutinizing his face for clues to what he was thinking, a friend of mine died, leaving us custody of her son, Jeremy. He's 11. I grabbed Nate's hand and placed it on my stomach. And this is your daughter, Elizabeth. She had a twin, Abigail, but I let my voice trail off, hearing the tears in my own voice. Nate slipped his arm around my waist, scratching my back. I raised my head, looking at Nate. I didn't remember being pregnant. Especially not with twins. Dr. Manning says that baby Miracle, as he refers to Elizabeth, is a force to be reckoned with, just like her mother. Dr. Manning? The head doctor on the Liberty, the vessel we command. He's an android. I rolled my eyes. He questions every decision I make, and he issues me orders and ultimatums. Maybe his creator left out his brain. Either that or he wishes to be dismantled, which I seriously considered after he refused to send a medical landing craft to help you. He wanted me to quit our mission and come back home. He wanted me to expose the rest of the crew to this illness you and I have had. What is our mission? You up to helping me? I asked after filling him in on the details of the mission. Absolutely, Jada Williams. He leaned in and kissed me gently on the lips. As if not sure, he backed up, studying me. I reached out and put my hands on his cheeks, cradling his face. I ran my thumb over his lips, then kissed him. Does that answer your question? I stared into his cappuccino-colored eyes adoringly. His lip inched upward on one side as he nodded slowly. He put his hands behind my neck, drawing my lips closer to his. He kissed me once, then twice, which turned into a series. He kissed me as if the experience was new to him. After a few seconds, he pressed his forehead against mine. He was silent for a couple of minutes before questioning, Peak, are we happy? I mean, our marriage, are we happy? I pulled away from him, gaping in stunned silence. My breath caught in my throat. Did he suddenly realize he didn't love me? Maybe he didn't want to be married with children. At first, I felt as if a hand crushed my heart, then the pain turned to anger. My fists bunched, my teeth gritted, and my heart raced. When I found my voice, I hissed, just because kissing me wasn't what you expected and you realize that you don't love me, I am not letting you off that easy. You still have a commitment to our children. He doubled over in laughter, holding his stomach. Tears streamed down his face. I glared at him incredulously. You find breaking up our family funny, I stammered through clenched teeth, raking my eyes over him slowly. You don't remember having to comfort Reggie after her dad died or of holding a shaking Remy when he has nightmares of his mother. What am I supposed to tell them? Nate lost his memory. I'm sorry, Reggie, Remy, Nate doesn't love you anymore, or me for that matter. He covered my mouth with his hand, fixing me with a level stare. That's quite enough, Peacock. He searched my eyes. His own shined with pleasure. He played with my hair with his other hand. I have loved you since the first moment I saw you. Even in training, I knew you were going to be the best agent I had ever worked with. You have a presence that just demands attention. You are so intelligent, so special and beautiful to boot. I knew that eventually you would love me as much as I love you. He looked away for a moment, his face twisted in anguish. Then he turned back to me. I have this feeling that I am losing you somehow, that you are slipping through my fingers, and I am helpless to do anything about it. I touched his face with my hand. I love you. To my ears and his, my voice sounded muffled. What was that? He solicited, removing his hand from my mouth. I said I love you. I put my hand under his dark hair, playing with it. I tilted my head to one side. You sure you don't remember anything beyond 2138? He shook his head, furrowing his brow, and queried, why? You were experiencing reoccurring nightmares that I left you for this town's grocer, Saber March. I clamped my eyes shut, frowning. I opened my eyes to meet Nate's concerned ones. I placed my hand on my heart. It just makes me ache knowing that you think, even subconsciously, that I would do that. I have reassured you over and over, but the nightmares continue. He brushed his lips against mine. I think, he expressed, kissing me again, that with a lot more reassurance, giving me another series of kisses, we can weather this storm. I drew him closer, returning his kiss. I put my hand on my stomach, trying to calm the hyper baby inside. Nate broke away from me, looking down at my stomach, then back up at me. Something wrong with the baby? No, but I do think it's time for her breakfast. You hungry? Starving. So we going out to eat? Or you want me to make something? I'll whip something up. I know I have a 13-year gap in my memory, but I still can taste your pancakes, he lamented, holding his stomach and his breath. I've learned to cook since then. I was stuck on this planet for 3 months, and there's only a greasy spoon, which isn't healthy for Lizzie, I reported, glancing down at my stomach. Chef Pacha Zitzi taught me how to prepare healthy, edible meals for the baby and me. Nate still appeared hesitant, but after some coaxing, he followed me into the kitchen.